Welcome to the Making of Me podcast, where we explore the defining moment that shape extraordinary people into who they have become. Today's guest is Serena Low, a trauma-informed coach for introverts, host of Quiet Warrior podcasts, a woman who spent 11 years building a legal career before a single question in a meeting changed the trajectory of everything. She walked away from law, lost her sense of who she was entirely, then made his second bold decision to migrate with her family from Singapore to Australia. To systemic life change in 2 years. What she built from that wilderness became her life work. It's really a pleasure and honor having on the show, Serena.
Thank you so much, Aro, for having me here.
Yeah, thank you so much. So Serena, before the law career and before the coaching, before any of the reinvention, who were you growing up as an introvert in Singapore? And what did that world around you tell you that quietness means about your worth and your potential?
What a juicy question. I love it. I have always been quiet. I've always been on the shy side, more of an observer than a talker. I love listening to people and I love understanding what makes human nature tick. But in the environment that I grew up in, that was perceived as being shyness was seen to be something like a disadvantage, like there was something wrong with you because you are too quiet. So you have to be the right kind of quiet, quiet enough to be a good girl. But if the adults talk to you or want you to say something, or the teacher wants you to say something, you have to have something to say on the spot. And I realized I wasn't good at that because I like to think about what I'm saying before I say it. So if a question doesn't make sense to me, or I was afraid of giving the wrong answer and getting punished, then I wouldn't say anything. I would only make sure I say the right thing. So that became a bit of a. So not only was I not very keen to speak up, I was more afraid of being blamed or being punished for saying the wrong thing. So I became over cautious and overthought everything. And that became a habit that I carried into adulthood. So what I took away from childhood experiences, perhaps unconsciously, was that I need to be perfect in order to be good enough. And I need to be perfect in order to be loved and to belong, which of course I didn't know at that time, at that age, but it became an underlying pattern in adulthood.
So you choose law as a profession that often reward extrovert performance, activeness, and visibility. Yeah, and visibility. What drew you to it, and how did you navigate 11 years in that environment? As someone who was wired so differently from the archetype it seems to reward.
What a good question. It does seem quite ironic that I chose law when I'm such a quiet person who doesn't like talking. I think I chose law because my parents divorced when I was 10, and I learned very early on what the meaning of affidavit and alimony and custody and those sorts of words meant. And so it was a bit too early for a child to be exposed to that sort of language. But that did give me an idea that maybe being from a broken family, maybe it could be useful to somebody someday when I grow up and become in a position to do something to help.
Oh, that was really a lot. I'm just imagining more like as a young girl then having to check the dictionary to see what is alimony, what is that was really a whole lot, having to know those meaning behind those words and trying to grasp the meaning owing to the divorce. Oh, it must actually be a whole lot and a whole lot of sin attached to this particular word, just beyond the word. Yeah, so in your 11 years as a lawyer, senior ask you a question in a meeting and something shifted. What was the question and what happened inside you that moment that you had not been expecting?
Well, first of all, the question was not expected. It was a typical work meeting. We were talking about changing the law. So we were talking about punctuation. We were talking about the right words to use. And in the middle of all this very ordinary conversation, this senior said, "Do you know where you're going to if you continue on this path?" So to give you some context, when you work in public service, there's not only the hierarchy, there's also like a timeline for promotion and for what happens to you. And then you might get transferred or posted to another agency. So you do that every couple of years, and hopefully you get promoted enough times along the way. At some point, when you're close to retirement, you would hope to have reached the pinnacle, what they call super scale. So that level of the hierarchy where you are pretty much at the top, you're very comfortable, very secure. And then you can retire and feel good about, everything that you've achieved. But when he asked that question, I had never thought of where I was going to be or what I was going to be doing 30 years down the road. I thought, well, since I've already started on this path, I'm going to carry on here till I retire. So there's really nothing to think about. But when he asked that, and I suddenly had this vision of myself, fast forward 30 years, looking back from retirement, looking back at this, all that I've done so far. And the one thing that I couldn't help asking, the one question that popped up at me was, what if I was supposed to be doing something else? What if there was something else out there that was meant for me, but I didn't have the courage to explore it because I was so adamant that this is the path, this is all I need to do, I don't have to think about anything else. But what if there was something else and I didn't know what that else was? And so that feeling, that question haunted me for a while.
Wow. Wow. Really a whole lot. And I'm just imagining how making a decision would have been. And having to walk away from 11 years career is not, yeah, it's not a small decision. What did that week and month after leaving actually feel like? And what surprised you the most about the establishing it was?
The best way I can describe that to you, Aru, is to say that the period after leaving Low was like walking through an emotional and spiritual wilderness. When you're out in the wilderness, you have no signposts, there's no Google Maps, there's no anything to tell you, here's where you are, that's there. You need to take this path, you need to take this step first, go on this path and go that way and turn left and turn right and so on. It's just nothingness. You have no clue. You've never been here before. It's all unfamiliar. You're completely lost. There's not another soul out there to guide you. So you're figuring this thing out on your own. You have no idea how long you're going to be stuck here for. And you don't know if you should be going straight ahead or left or right or maybe the whole thing is a very bad idea. I should just U-turn and go back to where I came from. Because at least I know where that is and I know what that is like. But right ahead of me, I've no idea. I'm going to be maybe walking into a bog or falling into a hole or something, and I can't even see the thing before it comes up.
A whole lot. I'm just imagine because I think I've done some couples of job and sometimes a year and 2 years, and there's still more like a feeling of not knowing what to do next when I leave. And I can't just grab that of 11 years yet. Be that it's really a whole lot. And wow. So you describe losing your identity entirely once the job was gone, not knowing who you were once the title was removed. How long did you live in that wilderness? What kept you moving through it when you could not yet see the other side?
I think I was in that wilderness for quite a few years. And on top of that, there were other things happening. So we had the opportunity to migrate. And I thought, well, since I've already done one brave thing or one reckless thing by leaving my career, I will do now the second thing while I'm still in this kind of a state of uncertainty. What can be? What else could go wrong? And so we uprooted and came over to Australia and started over. And of course, after a while, you realize, hang on, this is not just about a very long holiday. Actually, the savings are running out and I really need to get serious. And also on top of that, I was pregnant with my younger child when we arrived. And so a few months after we got to Australia, I gave birth to my younger child. So then I went into a different kind of transition, which was stay-at-home mom. And so that gave me purpose for a few years. But then again, when my younger child reached kindergarten, I thought, she's going to be going to school next year. I need to be thinking about what do I want to do and who am I and what do I want for this next season of my life. So I would say, yes, that wilderness period lasted a good few years of identity crisis and trying to figure out who am I without the profession, without the job title, without the status, and without the security of a regular paycheck.
Yeah. Oh, a whole lot. And starting over as an immigrant in a new country without the professional identity you had built as a woman and as an introvert. What did that compound experience demand of you that nothing in your previous life has prepared you for?
It demanded everything. First of all, I needed to know who am I? And the question became, who am I without my network, without my friends, without my family, without my familiar environment where I can walk anywhere, take the public transport, know exactly what's going to happen, who I'm going to talk to, and how to talk to people. Because even though I speak English as spoken in Australia is different from English as spoken in Singapore. And of course, there's a lot of cultural nuances. There's a lot of native slang that you don't understand until you've lived here for a few years. So there was a feeling of being like you're living in a parallel universe. You're like an alien. You've just landed and you have no clue what the locals do, and you have to figure it out. So it's like a giant puzzle.
Yeah, amazing, amazing. Which having to adapt to different culture, their nuance and everything is, yeah, it's really a whole lot. So you are a trauma informed in your coaching approach. What did your own 2 years of upheaval teach you about about how loss, identity collapse, and starting over actually live in the body, not just in the mind?
At it through a very unique perspective, and it's going to affect the way that they show up professionally as well as personally. So being trauma informed also means not judging. It means being able to sit with someone's difficult emotions, listen to them, let them articulate the way they do without telling them they are wrong or they need to change their mindset or they need to change their habits. It really is about how do I create that safe space for this person who has been through so much to feel that they can move on from where they are, but also to acknowledge what has happened before. Because we really don't know what people have gone through. Everyone is carrying something different. So when I come in from a trauma informed perspective, I'm not telling you that there's something wrong with the way you think, there's something about your behavior that you need to change. I want to understand why. I want to understand who you are. What have you been through? What could it be? Is there something in the past, some kind of root cause that we need to uncover
Yeah.
that is affecting the way you show up now? And then when we have those, that those stories, the things that you've maybe never told anybody else, then I can begin to understand you better. And then we can talk about, so what do you want to do with this?
Yeah, amazing, amazing. Yeah, I think they just speak a whole lot of volumes, being that if you had lived through an experience, there is this more like layers of the fact that you know what it feels like, you know what the pains look like, being that you have gone through it, you know what it feels like to be ignored without having any identity. Yeah, and thank you for what you're doing now. It's amazing. So you built Quiet Warrior podcasts and a coaching practice specifically for introverts, quiet achievers who are capable and visible in their own ways. How much of that focus is autobiographical? And when did you realize that your introversion was not something to overcome, but something to build from?
So there's two questions there. The first one was to do with how much of it is autobiographical. I think
Yeah,
anyone who embarks on any kind of work where they're trying to help somebody else always starts by helping a previous version of themselves
yeah,
first. We're always trying to heal that inner child in ourselves, the 5-year-old, the 14-year-old that went through something painful. And we think, now that I know what I know, I hope that what I share can help another 5-year-old, can help another 14-year-old to not have to go down that painful path. So, what is personal is also universal. So, I guess a lot of what informs my coaching practice is also based on my personal lived experience, but also the experience of talking with so many fellow quiet achievers and fellow introverts. And when I talk with them and they tell me their stories, I realize these are the same patterns. We may have different specific details, but the patterns are similar. That feeling of feeling out of place, not belonging, not being
yeah.
accepted unless I'm perfect, unless I'm good enough, of overthinking because I want to be careful, because I'm afraid of being blamed or being punished. Those patterns, they stay with us for a long time unless we actively find someone who makes it safe for us to talk about those things and process those emotions and then think about how, now that I know this, how do I change the story?
Amazing. Until you get to find someone who understand you and give you the safe space to actually be able to express yourself without any judgment. Yeah, amazing, amazing. Also, looking back now at those 2 years, those 2 years living low, loss, losing your identity, migrating to a new country. What are you most grateful for about the wilderness season because of the coach, the warrior, and the woman it has made you?
I would say all of those things. I'm most grateful for the growth. The growth has been
Mm,
painful. It has not been comfortable. It
yeah,
has been very, very humbling. There are many times when I felt like, compared to my peers who stayed on in the legal profession, I felt I was really far behind. Because I stopped being a lawyer, I couldn't compare myself with them at all. They just kept progressing, and I seemed to be going sideways or backwards, or there's just no way to compare. But I also realized that there is really no need to compare because everyone is on a personal journey and we don't know what each person's purpose on earth is. So my job is to focus on my own purpose, which is to amplify the voice of the quiet achiever and help them to become a quiet warrior. So that for now is my purpose. So when I focus on that, it gives me a lot of joy, a lot of energy, and a lot of gratitude because I can see my clients as well as people who reach out to me. I can see the change in them. I get to witness that a little word of encouragement at the right time can make such a big difference to someone. That when I share my podcast episode or share an interview I've done with someone, the words sometimes have their own power and they carry on without me. So somebody can just take away those few words because they heard it at the time when they needed to hear it. And then they go and do something different with their lives because of it. So that's my little contribution.
Yeah, amazing, amazing. Everyone has a personal journey. Yeah, that was really amazing. A way of reframing the fact that yeah, we don't need to compare ourselves. Everybody have their individual journey. Sticking true to it and doing what needed to be done. So actually, yeah, it's amazing. And thank you for what you're doing. So let's dive a bit into the work you do now. So you help introvert achieve professional visibility without having to act extroverted. What does that distinction mean, and why is the advice most introverts receive about visibility actually was work against them?
So the common problem for a lot of quiet achievers, a lot of introverts, is that their quality and their competence are not visible in the way that corporate organizations require. A lot of corporate organizations are very extrovert biased, which means that the louder you are, the more you are recognized, the more you are rewarded, and the more you are seen to be a leader. But there are so many ways to lead. And an introvert's style of leadership is different. They don't talk as much, but they listen very well. They create safe spaces, they facilitate, they include all the voices that are in the room and not just the loud ones. They will notice if somebody is being left out of the conversation. They will notice when someone didn't get an opportunity to speak up, and they will find a way to bring that person in and bring that point of view in. And so I think the introvert as a leader has so many strengths, so many good traits that would help an organization to be more balanced and to actually value all their talent and not just half the talent.
Yeah, value all these talents and not just yeah, amazing quality and competence. I think they just speak a whole lot of volume, being that a whole lot of organization speak volume to just make reference of the fact that a whole lot of our introvert might have these skills when it comes to quality and competence, but being that they didn't show it out every now and then, they have been left behind when it comes to giving out position, when it comes to promotion and everything. Yeah, this is really a great space, and I'm glad that someone is finally speaking volumes to it, because I've just imagined what it mean like more like being in a particular space where those who are lower than you are getting a whole lot of things and you are not getting it out owing to the fact that you don't know how to put yourself in there, and having to kind of learning from you being that you've gone through it. I think it's really key. Also, you talk about faking it till you make it is being genuinely bad advice for introvert. What goes wrong when an introvert tries to perform extroversion, and what is the alternative that can actually?
I think anytime we have to pretend or have to put on a mask to be
Yeah.
somebody we are not, it's going to take a toll on you. There's going to be a cost, there's a consequence. So you can do it for some time. And some people do it very successfully. I've heard of introverts who put on that mask of extroversion while they are at work, because the nature of the job is such that they have to be talking to people all the time. They need to be presenting. They need to be upfront as the leader. But the question I want to ask is, at what cost to yourself? So if it's going to be exhausting, if you find yourself on the danger of burning out, if you find that you go home and your mind can't switch off, you're constantly worrying about your job, worrying about whether you did well enough, when actually you're doing really, really well, but to you, with your high standards, you think it's not enough yet. And so you keep pushing, you keep hustling, you stay up to 3 a.m., you try to proofread the slide deck one more time before the next client meeting, and nothing is ever good enough for you. Then I would say there is a real red flag there in terms of your health, mentally as well as physically. You're not going to be at your best if you're exhausted and burned out. And that's what faking it does to you. Because the introvert is very much about personal integrity. They don't really want the limelight. They don't want to be in the spotlight. They just want to do good work. But if you put them up there and they have to perform in order to be recognized, that's going to come at a cost to them. So you're not going to get the best out of an exhausted and burned out introvert. You're going to get one side of them, but that is going to be diminishing returns. It's going to be depleted because their social battery can't cope with it. They have to go away and replenish. They have to be by themselves. They need enough rest in order to do the deep thinking that they are known for.
Hmm. Amazing. Fake it and make it. Thing you make it does not actually get to work in that. It's just putting up a face, and the exhaustion when it comes into pain, it's really a whole lot. Yeah. Imposter syndrome is in high stake meetings and conversation is something you address directly. What is actually happening for an introvert in those moments, and what shifts when they finally understand it, not as a character flaw.
I would start by saying that it's not just introverts who experience imposter syndrome. I think everyone does, even the very successful people. But because the introvert is already very hyper focused on being perfect in everything that they do, they start to compare themselves with others. They start thinking, I'm not good enough. Even though they've got 90% or over 90%, they'll think, but I'm not 100%. I'm still not there yet. But somebody else who doesn't have that problem will be thinking, well, I'm just going to put in 70% and that's good enough, and then I'm going home. So you have the introvert who is constantly pushing themselves to do better and do more, in danger of burning out. So that's one aspect of the imposter syndrome. So the way to turn that around is to not focus so much on yourself, but to focus on, what is this thing giving me? What is the joy that this job or this role or this organization is giving me? How does it tie back to my values? Let's say your values are to do with making a difference, making a positive difference, or helping others. So find a way to link your work to your personal values, what I call your ethos, and look for ways to fulfill that through the work you do. So instead of thinking, oh, I'm not good enough, think about, what can I do to make life better for my customers? What problem are my customers facing right now that I can help them with? And I'm going to use my introvert strengths. I'm really good at data. I'm really good at research. I'm really good at looking for accurate sources. And I can tell quality from just being superficial. So I'm going to put together a really good argument for how to do this thing differently so that we can help our clients. So when you do it that way, leaning into your own quiet strengths, then you're not pretending to be like anybody else, and you're not working from anybody else's personality. You're just noticing what are the things you already do well at, and how does that combine together with your personal ethos. And that will give you meaning and a focus that is nothing to do with you being in the spotlight. It's not about you per se, it's about your message, your work, and your contribution. So I think we need a bigger way of looking at things, not just to focus on ourselves and our flaws or imperfections, but look at how our strengths can be used for a bigger good.
Yeah, think about the big pictures. Amazing, amazing. Thank you so much. So you work with over 40 people, 40 who has dedicated years to building career. They are now uncertain about what do you say to introverts who has finally reached the level of success and still feel unseen, or worse, still wondering whether all of it was right for them.
I think every season in our lives, Aro, we are going to be asking ourselves that question. The reason I say over 40 is because that means they have already stacked up about, 20 years or so in the professional sense. They've built up a certain identity. They have reached mid-level at least in their career. And it means that there is a greater cost. Now they have to ask themselves, in the next season, do I still want more of the same, or do I want to change direction? Is there something else that's calling me that I need to pay attention to? And if there is something new that's calling me, what am I going to do about it? Am I going to procrastinate and say not now? Or am I going to be brave and take this new adventure? And what is it going to cost me? So these are all very important questions, and you can't rush through them. You can't say, okay, I give myself 30 minutes to work this out. It doesn't work like that. It could be something that comes back to you every year for a few years until you're finally ready to do something. And sometimes it takes that external wake-up call, being laid off or a health problem or something like that, to make us think about what's really important to us. And that's when we realize life is short. I've only got these many years left. I want to make the best of them. I want to be the best possible person I can be while I'm here. I want to do something, not just for myself, but also for other people. So what's the best way to go about that? So these are important questions to sit with.
So lastly, what legacy do you hope the Quiet Warrior podcast and your coaching practice leave, especially for the quiet achiever who has spent a lifetime being told in subtle and not subtle way that they need to be louder automatic.
Well, I would hope that the Quiet Warrior podcast and the coaching practice are part of that contribution towards stopping this tide and turning things around, pushing the pendulum back the other way so that introverts can start seeing themselves more as not just quiet achievers, but also quiet warriors. Because what a warrior is a warrior is not someone without fear. A warrior is someone who still has fear, but they keep going. They keep
Yeah,
taking the
sure.
next step. They may not know what is in front of them. They may not know whether they're going to come out of it safely. They don't know what the cost is yet, but they are willing to keep taking the next step and the next step because there is a greater purpose that is driving
Yeah,
them. And that's what I want our quiet achievers to connect with, their own individual purpose that helps them become a warrior. So it could be something that's bigger than themselves. It could be something, it could be for another person. It could be for a group of people, maybe their community, a way for
yeah,
them to think about how can I use my quiet voice and my quiet gifts to be in service of other people too. So when you start thinking of other people and you start thinking of the bigger picture and a bigger purpose, then your fear becomes small. Your courage becomes greater because now your courage has got an outlet, it's got a purpose. And when you have that purpose, you can't help but be pulled forward. So even if you are fearful, you will still find a way around the fear. You will always have the fear with you, but the fear will not overcome you. It will become relatively small because the purpose is bigger than the fear.
amazing, amazing. I think we just reframe it from more of the warrior perspective. Just speak a whole lot of what has been that. Yeah, you just have to keep showing up every now and then, even if do it afraid, do it. Yeah, just regardless, do it and keep showing up. Or show up even when you're tired. Show up when you're fearful. You're a warrior. You just have to mount your guard and being able to do what is needful. Yeah, when it comes to be amazing. Thank you so much. Eric. This has been an amazing conversation. Yeah, thank you so much. Also, for my audience, who would love to reach out to you to learn more about your work and also to follow you on the podcast journey and that of the coaching. How can they reach out to you and where is the best platform?
I would say the best platform would be LinkedIn. I'm very active there. I'm posting every day up something to do with introversion, to do with quiet achievers and how to help. And also the Quiet Warrior podcast for those that love listening and love taking in
Yeah.
information in an auditory form. That I think is a good first step as well.
Yeah, thank you for such a thoughtful, honest, genuine movie conversations. Your journeys just remind us that the question that's unravel everything is sometimes the most important one we ever hear. Even when we are not ready for it, from an 11 years legal career to an identity wilderness to building a new life on a new continent and a body of work that give quiet people permission to lead on their own terms. Your story is a proof that wilderness is not the end of the story. It's where the real one began. Once again, it's really a pleasure and honor. Have a nice day.
Thank you so much, Aru.